Now this bald eagle or fish eagle demo, it's got a very different eye, and it's all about this spot, this sun spot. Without that, the eye will lose all life completely. And you've got very dark areas, it's casting a real dark shadow. Without that spot, look how dead the eye looks. And just with that white spot, it really gives life to the bird. It's got this really pronounced brow, which is casting a very dark, sharp-edged, almost dissecting the eye in two with that shadow. So we've got a real dark section there, and then this is so light that the iris, you can actually see the texture and the what appears to be lights and shades in the actual iris itself. And it's a white bird, but look, even the colours. I've got a white surrounding, but I can see other colours that are far from white on these white feathers. I can see pinks there, and then over here in the shadows I can see much more green. So as I've done in the previous demos, I start by blocking in that real dark area. I think I'll start with the pupil this time. It really sets the scene. So I mix up a little bit of painted medium, burnt umber, black, and that's a real nice dark. So let's block that in straight away. And then I can assess the other colours around it much more easily. Yeah, it's very dark in those corners. I'm going to warm this colour up a little bit. A little bit of cadmium red. Or Winsor red actually, I think it was. Yeah, Winsor red. A little bit of painted medium. Let's get these edges in. Otherwise that green colour is going to be very difficult to assess if I haven't got anything to go by. It goes across the top, under the brow, around the side. There's a bit redder in there, so I'm going to warm that up even more. A little bit of white just to lighten it. Burnt sienna. Block those colours in. Comes right around the bottom edge, and then it goes to a very, very thin line, which I'll establish later on. Wash out the brush, odorless thinners, and I'm going to pick a larger brush. It's a flat bristle, and let's see if I can get that dark green in. It's an unusual colour, so I'm just going to have to try a few things out, see if I can match it. This is where a nice laminated reference photo would come in handy, so I'm just going to scrub it on the edge. A little bit greener than that. It's surprising how green this area is, and if I was mixing on a white palette I'd really be struggling. A little bit of blue, and that's going to make the green yellow go even greener. Yeah, even more. Very surprising to find this much green on a white bird. Yeah, that's pretty close, I'd say. It'll look a lot better when I get that yellow area in. Just scrubbing it in, just giving myself a nice base to work upon. I can see a little bit of it down there as well. And just assessing the both of them, the reference against my painting. A little bit of green. Washing out the brush again. This is where you'll see now that working on a tone canvas really has great benefits, as this white with just a couple of tinges of colour I'm going to use will really pop straight away on this tone canvas. Just the tiniest hints of colours on this white. And you can't really see it on the reference photo because of the light, but there are just slight colours in there that makes it just off-white. And I'm going slightly darker than I want so that I can build these colours on top. If I go too light now, I won't be able to build any of that fur texture on there. So let's just scrub this area in, and it's almost the same colour on the whole of the top. A little bit pinkier down there, but I can adjust that. That's not a problem. Let's just try and get the basic colour in first. I can see that area needs to go much darker, but that's easy to adjust as well. A little bit around the corner, scrubbing in, under the eye. There, that's the basic blocking in done. I need to put a little bit of yellow on that brow and around the eye as well, just to bring it all together. That area needs to be much darker. Much darker still, and I can also see some warmth in there as well. It does appear to be a bit redder than that green. Just a bit around the edge of that brow, and I'll warm it up with some burnt sienna. Just see how that looks. Even redder again. And of course it's these shadows that really give the shape and form to the eye area and the surrounding eye area, so they are very important. Brushing in the direction of the feathers, just to create those layers. Giving the brush another wash off, and I'm going to change to a round synthetic now, just so that I've got that nice smaller edge so that I can get these yellows in. You can probably hear a storm yet again in the background. I'm not going to let that stop me. See, even with that yellow, it's way too vibrant, and I'm going to need to subdue that. It's surprising. We know that around the eye of the eagle is yellow, but actually it's much more of a green in this instance, a real subdued green. So a little bit of blue just makes that yellow greener, and then subdue it with the black, and lightening it with some titanium white. How's that? Too green, so I need to warm that up with some of the orange, some of the yellow. Try it again. That's closer. Still a bit green for my liking. You can see that on the palette it doesn't look anything like it's going to be right at all. but when I paint it in and put it into the actual area, it's pretty close. Yeah, and around that area I need to be careful. It's yellow on the outer area, and then I've got that slight line of pink, fleshy pink just inside of it, so I don't want to lose that. That goes around the top, and then we've got that thick area for the brow as well, which I'll warm up. I'll add a little bit more yellow to that, more orangey yellow. But that's good enough for now for a start. It needs to be a little bit larger, back around there. And it goes to a bit of a point inside, and then goes up a little bit. And that's mixing, obviously that colour is mixing with the dark colours that I've got on there, so I haven't got to keep mixing fresh colours all the time to get these effects. It just goes a little bit in there as well by the look of it. And slightly brighter in the corner. Okay, it's darken that whole mix down with a little bit of black, just to get that nice dark shadow underneath, which makes the iris and the cornea and the actual bulbous part of the eye appear to come forward and out slightly over this ridge. This under layer needs to be really quite dark. And the same up there as well. A little bit more around the bottom. I'll tidy that area up later on. Right, let's try and get that pink in. I've washed the brush out, odorless thinners, a little bit of the red, white, and it's not a very pink colour, it's more of a brown, so I'll put a little bit of those burnt umbers, burnt siennas in there just to brown the whole area down a bit. Let's try that to start with, and then I can always lighten it up. Yeah, and it will need lightening quite a bit there. But as far as the colour is concerned, that's not too far off. Just re-establish that highlight, and that's pretty good. Okay, needs to go a little bit darker there, a little bit redder up in the corner. Washing out the brush. Okay, let's start with the iris on that area there, and I can see a green in there as well, only slight, but it's definitely in there. So let's just start with a couple of rough brush strokes in just to assess the colour. And I keep that edge very sharp there, just so I can get a nice sharp shadow. Just blocking in the initial colour, just to give me something to work on top of. Let's try and mix up a bluey green just for that edge. It seems to be much darker than what I've painted in so far. Let's try and get those ridges in as well. A bit more blue, and any colour that I've got on the canvas that I think is required, rather than going into pure paint. Don't need to mix up a new special paint for every little area. Use what's on the palette, use what you've actually mixed up so far. Okay, let's have a look at that shadow area, because only when that shadow area is in will I really be able to see how light I've actually gone on the iris so far. And once again, that's a real dark green up on the top. So it needs to be dark enough that you can still see the pupil and you can still see that dark area on the right hand side. So it mustn't be darker than that, but it needs to be dark enough. So it's really judging one area against the other now. Looking for lost and found edges as well, where one area blurs right into the other. Let's get that quite sharp there, and that's almost dissected it in the middle, and then it goes around the edge a little bit. I'll paint directly over the sun highlight as well. I can put that in later on. You can see how essential it's got to be. Without it, the eye is completely dead. I'll re-establish the shape of the pupil before I lose it completely. It needs to be quite a sharp edge as well. I can also use that colour then to block in and re-establish some of those darks that I've muddied up a little bit. A little bit redder, a little bit warmer on that corner, and that's got to come out a little bit as well. Just glance into the reference and back to the painting and back to the reference, just making slight adjustments. Okay, wash the brush again just so I can get more of a pure paint in there. Oh, I'm going to keep muddying it up all the time. Okay, I've changed over now to the rigger brush. And I'm going to put that dot in just so I can see where I am in the painting. I need to go lighter than that, but I'll get that little bit of blue in first. There's actually a blue rim to it, and then I put in the dot of pure white on top, which represents the sun. And then I can see what areas I need to lighten and darken, and there, that's brought it to life. It has showed me that the darker areas need to go darker, the lighter areas need to go lighter, especially down the bottom of the eye. start putting a little bit of the highlighted feather in. I'm sure I've actually called this fur on numerous occasions. I paint fur so often and feathers so rarely that I'm going to make those mistakes just out of habit. Chiseled edge to the brush, painting it just like you would fur. Feathers overlap as well, so it's the same technique. And with the whites here, this is definitely a painting that I would allow to stand overnight, or even 2 nights, and then come back into it and really bump those highlights right up. You see, I'm always thinking of the texture that I'm painting, and I'm asking myself questions all the time. Which direction do I need to apply the stroke? Is it too light? Is it too dark? Should I use a dabbing motion? Should I use a long stroke motion? And those are the type of questions you need to ask yourself, not asking people. I get people asking me all the time, what colours do I mix to make up a tiger? What colours do I mix up to make up a giraffe? And it's always different in every different type of light, and it changes all the time. You can never get a specific colour mix. You need to ask yourself the correct question so that you can mix the colours yourself. That's the only way you learn, and then all of a sudden it'll start to become second nature. I think I'll start to re-establish these darks again now and really bring the paint into a finish. Another 5-10 minutes should really accomplish that. Now I'm looking for the edges that are lost, where one edge is lost into another, and that makes for an interesting area in a painting. You don't need to put in every single part, leave something up to the imagination. I'm learning that more and more each year that I'm painting. The more you can leave like that, the more interesting the painting is. Darkening under that lid, and that's going to make the top area come out a bit more. And that top area needs to go a bit darker too, to make that upper brow really protrude out. I could add a little bit of red to this mix just to make it a little bit more accurate, but I'm really more interested in the tones, the lightness and the darkness, than the colours. Just really fine-tuning it now. Just washed off the brush so I can start with a fresh mix. Start to go a little bit darker again now. Just really fine tuning. I don't want to overwork this as a demonstration piece. I don't want to spend too much time on the feathers when we could get onto another eye demo. But I'll bring this up to some form of completion. Now the point there really needs to come out a bit more. I had the shape a little bit wrong. Let's get that dark back in there. And this area is quite important. That's where the light is just coming off that edge and lighting up the eyelid. Just in line with the shadow of the brow. That needs to be quite a thick, hard edge, just to push the rest of it down in. Just use a sweeping stroke, just so the paint lies on top of the already wet paint, rather than digging into it. Nice and gentle. Just some pure highlights, pure white here and there, just to give the impression of the important feather markings. Warm that colour up with a little bit of burnt sienna. Few thin lines just to suggest individual feathers. Let's try and get that eye colour a little bit more accurate, a little bit more blue, I think. Obviously the lighter this side of the eye goes, the darker the other eye, part of the eye in shadow will appear. Just because the one is playing off against the other. A nice crisp edge there, so I've changed the position of my hand and brush so that I'm pushing into the already wet paint rather than dragging out from it. needed the lightest area down there, with that directly opposite the sunspot on top. Needs to be the lightest area at the bottom. That's better. And that makes it that much more punchy again. Not a great deal left to do on this one. I can see a couple of areas that I can warm up slightly perhaps. Just soften the edge of the pupil. Just a few more thick, solid highlights just on the lightest parts, just to punch it up that little bit more just at the very end. Hope you've enjoyed this little demo. Something, the subject itself is not unusual, but the actual positioning of the eye and such strong lighting is quite unusual, so I thought it would be a nice one to actually cover in these demos. Just put in the last few details and we'll go on to the next one.